Hi there. Today we'll be taking a look at Love When We Get High by Paco Versailles. This cheerful and uplifting song occupies a special place in my heart as my top 1 most listened song in 2024. I've been wanting to analyze why I like it so much for so long, and I finally got around to it. So without further ado, let's see what's so special about this song. Okay, so we start with the intro, which greets us with a 12/8 time signature. What this means is that every measure contains 12 eighth notes, subdivided into 4 groups of 3, like this. The drums confirm this scheme of note groupings, as the bass and snare drums play a 4 on the floor beat. But wait a minute, look at the accompanying instruments. The auxiliary percussion and hi-hats lock in that triplet feel by emphasizing the offbeats, like this. What's more interesting, though, is this opening synth. Do you notice anything interesting about its notes? Well, ignoring all tonality here for a second, and focusing purely on the rhythm, the synth contains 3 repetitions of this motif per bar. But wait, didn't I just say that a bar in this song contains 4 groups of 3/8 notes, and not 3 groups of 4/8 notes? Well, yeah. In this case, though, this synth is actually just demonstrating the concept of polyrhythms. And more specifically, it's playing a 3 against 4 polyrhythm, where it contains 3 subdivided groupings of notes per measure, against 4 subdivided groupings of notes per measure. The synth, together with the percussion in conjunction, is quite rhythmically interesting, and definitely draws in your attention. Before moving on, though, I want you to pay attention to this bass turnaround at the end here. It's going to be a central motif throughout the song, so get familiar with it. After the 8 bars of getting you acclimated to the rhythm, a drum fill and bass pickup gives way to the tonal part of the song. Let's take a look at the score. What's new? Well, this bass is new, and it's pretty trance-inducing and drawn out. The sidechain effect from the kick forces it to pulse like a heartbeat, driving the song onwards. The piano and synth cooperate in striking grand fluorescent chords, leaving tons and tons of space in between. And what fills in the space? Well, the guitar, of course. It alternates between plucking chord notes upwards and downwards. How playful! And the last thing I want to talk about is the chord progression, and then use that to explain why the introduction of the vocal ad-libs here sounds so relaxed and carefree, yet also a bit lamenting. Let's go back to the synth polyrhythm for a minute here, and instead of viewing it from a rhythmic perspective, let's take a closer look at its notes. C, D, F, and G. These are 4 out of the 5 notes in the G minor pentatonic scale. Together with the ensuing chords, it's apparent that the key is in G minor. Knowing this now, let's take a look at the vocals here in the intro. Notice that in both instances of this motif, the note sung on the tonic chord is an A, which is the 2nd scale degree in G minor. Arguably, it can be interpreted as the 9th in the G minor chord, but it's much more useful to treat it as a tension note, which needs to resolve. And where does it resolve? Well, that's the interesting part. The first time, it resolves up to the 3rd, but floats away to the 4th scale degree, which sounds pretty unresolved and tense if you ask me. The second time, though, it resolves back to the tonic, bringing about quite a resolved melancholic feel. So after the intro, we arrive at the verse, marked by the introduction of the vocals. Let me play you the vocal stem first, and see if you can notice anything special about it.
Sugar on my face, sipping my life into a better place.
Hopefully, you can tell that the melody is a male and female duet, and appreciate how mellow and laid back it is. The magic, though, lies in these duplets. Remember how I mentioned in the intro that this song's measures are divided into 4 groups of 3/8 notes? Well, the vocals come in with a big subversion of that convention, and introduces the 2 against 3 polyrhythms with these duplets. What does that mean? Well, normally, each beat in the song contains 3 subdivisions. But the duplets overrides that, and instead forces 2 subdivisions into each main beat. The result? While the instruments are enforcing the 3 subdivisions per beat feel, the vocals refute this convention and does its own thing. How cool is that? Besides the vocals, look at how the accompanying instruments build momentum as the section progresses. The drum beat begins simple with unaccented hats. But through the 16 bars of the verse, it readopts the accents on the offbeats. The rigid and quantized bass contrasts the formless vocals. Its notes are very exact and features distinct pauses in between them. Notice how this also contrasts the previous section, where the bass line contains long, continuous notes without much space in between. Alright, enough yapping. I'll let you listen to the verse in its entirety now.
Sugar on my face, sipping my life into a better place. Candy in my eyes, surprise, surprise. Sunshine on your lips, melting love with your fingertips. Something in the air, everywhere. Love when we get high.
Off of the bass turnaround, into the chorus we go. Here are some keen observations about this section that I find interesting. The bass line reverts back to long, drawn-out notes, which occupy full measures. On top of that, its timbre also changes from a fairly agreeable bass in the verse to a rich, powerful one here in the chorus. The vocals here also require some examination. Though it appears quite monophonic, it is actually faintly doubled an octave below and a third above.
Love when we get high, all day, let's play.
And isn't it funny how it resolves to the 7th scale degree on the tonic chord? It's like the song is teasing you for a proper resolution, but never actually giving you one. I also want to speak briefly about the chord progression, and point out that although this song is in the key of G minor, the dominant chord D never shows up even once in this entire song.
Love when we get high, all day, let's play. We can ride this wave until we're safe. Love when we get high, all day, let's play. We can ride this wave until we're safe.
Onward to the second verse, marked by the noticeable drop in overall volume and energy. The vocals retain the form of the first verse, though the female voice is much more dominant here. The duplets remain a central feature. The bass, though it appears quite rhythmically banal, actually employs an interesting trick to boost its presence. Take a listen and see if you can spot it. Compared to the bass timbre in the chorus and the first verse, The bass texture in this section is much more fuzzy. If you zoom into the waveform of the bass, you can see that the left and right channels don't match up perfectly, which creates a spatial effect visualizable by a stereo imager like this. Apart from the plagal cascade mentioned before, which really needs no further explanation besides this visual proof, it's also pretty crucial to point out the fact that this section seems to be an aberration from the key of G minor. Look, although the G minor chord is present, the song does not necessarily sound resolved on that chord at all. It sounds much more resolved on this F major chord, which could suggest that the verses are actually in the key of F mixolydian. But of course, this claim is up for debate, and obsessing over the key of a song is kind of meaningless. Another quick but necessary observation about this section. The 4-note synth from the intro makes his return in the middle of the section, and man does it sound nostalgic. To me, I always envisioned it to be a metaphor for that juvenile and insatiable voice in your head, tempting you to indulge in another high. And it makes sense in this context. The verse leads to the chorus, the metaphorical and the literal high of the song.
Watercolor skies, dripping clouds and liquid lights. Tell me how you feel. I don't care what you reveal. Capricious little days. I can feel my mind is changing lanes. A sentimental place. Sugar on your face. Love when we get high.
The chorus comes around for the second time, and there's really only 2 elements that changes noticeably. Firstly, the vocal harmonies are louder and more perceptible this time, and there's an addition of some female countermelody. Note that the melody still doesn't resolve on a triad note, much like the first verse. Now, onto my personal favorite change in this section. The bass line finally begins syncopating, joining the synth and vocals in shenanigans. It's also pretty humorous how it does nothing in the first measure, and then suddenly deciding to have some fun from measure 2 onwards. Did the bassist get high as well? Anyways, the polyrhythm that the bass maintains for this entire section is a 3/2 polyrhythm, and this is a simplified schema of the rhythm that the bass plays. Take a listen and match it to the bass line. Because of this change, the second chorus is much more playful than the first. The high of the first chorus is much more mellow and magical, whereas here it is more energetic and familiar.
Love when we get high. All day, let's play. We can ride this wave until we're safe. Love when we get high. All day, let's play. We can ride this wave until we're safe.
In the guitar solo, there is really not a lot to say. The instrumentals continue on as before in the chorus, and the guitar occupies a spotlight in place of the vocals. The solo mostly stays in the G minor pentatonic scale, with the occasional passing note here and there, but nothing too out of the ordinary. And there's a cool bass lick here in the middle of the section that replaces the usual bass turnaround, and I think it sounds pretty cool. Alright, other than that, there's not a lot to say, so enjoy the music. Finally, we arrive at the outro chorus. And believe me, there is so much to say about this section. Where do I even begin? Let's start small and point out the obvious. For the first time in this song, the guitar changes its role. Before, it provided harmony and melody. Now, it tremolos steadily on the root note of the chord progression percussively. It acts as a force of motion, driving the song onwards towards the climax. The piano, formerly an agreeable mid-ground detail, now speaks aloud confidently, adding some lively and vibrant countermelody. It even mimics the synth melody here with its own twist. Speaking of the synth, it's really hard to believe that this polyrhythmic motif only appears in the song a total of 3 times. Somehow, each instance thereof feels different in their respective environments. In the intro, it was a shimmering foreshadowing of good times. In the verse, it was a nostalgic reminder of said good times. And finally, here, it embodies the immediate presence of the good times. Okay, now onto the bass. Much like the transition between the first verse to the chorus, the bass here makes up for the loss of rhythm by intensifying its texture. Listen to that grit. The change in the bass's texture pairs well with the drums, which intensified its syncopation and also uses ride cone hits to accentuate the hemiolas. These tiny details and accents may seem insignificant, but in the greater context of this section, they unmistakably add a captivating flair to the atmosphere, even if you don't realize it. Alright, finally we reach the centerpiece, the vocals and the underlying chord progression. When you take a listen at the vocals, it is impossible to ignore the beautiful, rich, and blissful harmony. Here, as I mentioned before, the vocals finally resolve to a triad note, or rather, all 3 notes of the triad on the tonic chord. Unconventionally, though, the chord progression here borrows the flat 2 chord from the Phrygian scale for an extra powerful resolution. And wouldn't you know it, the A flat to E flat transition is yet again another plagal resolution. And to end things off, isn't it fitting that the bass turnaround ends the song, doubled by the guitar? Thank you all for tuning in for this video, and I hope you all have a good day.